This episode of Nerdist News is sponsored by Mortal Kombat 11. Was Bran completely worthless for the Battle of Winterfell? Game of Thrones' latest episode, The Long Night, was the culmination of 8 seasons of storytelling with the battle between the living and the dead. And despite the huge scope and the sheer number of characters, the episode, for the most part, managed to spend time with each one and give them all a moment to shine, except seemingly for one. Of course, before we get into things, this episode is going to go deep into episode 70 of Game of Thrones, The Long Night. So if you don't want to get spoiled, take Bran's lead.
I'm going to go now.
Go where?
So you probably know where we are going with this. Most characters manage to survive insurmountable odds while holding their own, except for one. Bran Stark, aka the Three-Eyed Raven. For someone who has inherited a seemingly important magical role and who has longtime beef with the Night King, Bran seemed content to stick to the sidelines and watch Netflix for most of the battle. And the interweb seems torn on whether Bran was underutilized or clutch to winning the battle. For a full breakdown on both, head on over to Nerdist.com. But for the too long didn't read, let's start with how he supposedly dropped the ball. First of all, Bran's big move was to warg into a bunch of ravens and take to the skies around Winterfell. The Night King had been noticeably absent from the battle, and Bran's ravens discovered just where the Night King was. This is good tactics, so what did Bran do with this knowledge? Tell the forces of the living? No, they sort of just fly around for a while. Yes, he got a bird's eye view of the battle, but that information didn't help anyone in any way. We guess it's cool that he can warg into a bunch of animals now instead of just one, but we can think of at least one way for him to show that his powers have grown. Maybe try your hand at warging into a dragon and murdering a bunch of whites instead of warging into a conspiracy of ravens, which seriously, that's what a bunch of ravens is called. Of course, maybe this weird choice by Bran wasn't as bad as it seemed. More on that later. The second issue with Bran and his actions or inaction during the battle is squarely on us, the audience expectations. Bran's entire story arc has led him to this moment. Over the past few seasons, fans have watched Bran on his quest that eventually led to him becoming the Three-Eyed Raven.
I don't know what that means.
Part of this journey included uncovering the past to give us clarity on the future. Jon Snow's true parentage, how Hodor became Hodor, and how the White Walkers came to be. However, his relationship with the Night King has always been shrouded in mystery. So when Bran says, "I'm going to go now," audiences weren't wrong in expecting something big from him. If this was supposed to be a battle between the Night King and the Three-Eyed Raven, what they got was disappointing. But just because Bran didn't appear to be the MVP during the episode, it doesn't mean he wasn't secretly the mastermind behind the scenes and the key to victory. It all comes down to his memorable words to Theon Greyjoy. "Everything you did brought you where you are now, where you belong." This gives us some serious similar vibes to how Doctor Strange saw over 14,605 possible outcomes in Avengers Infinity War, and then went and gave the Time Stone to Thanos to try to ensure a win. Sure, it might have seemed like the absolute wrong decision at the time to all of us who can't see the future. Spoilers for Endgame, but it worked out for the Avengers. What we saw Bran do in this episode was not all we got from him, but rather what we saw in the episode was the culmination of previous actions made by Bran and possibly the whole line of Three-Eyed Ravens before him. The whole reason he was positioned in the Godswood of Winterfell was to draw the Night King out into a vulnerable position. And guess what? Not only was this successful, but it was his idea.
We need to lure him into the open before his army destroys us all. I'll wait for him in the Godswood.
Great job, Bran. As for him piecing out and joyriding with his conspiracy of ravens during the battle, while this might be a little thin, we would argue that it might have been a little bit of psychological warfare against the Night King, basically taunting him.
I'm going to go now.
And as we saw, shortly after Bran launched the Ravens, the Night King makes his move, forcing his troops over the trenches and continuing the siege instead of just waiting around outside the fire moat. Bran could have seen that it was this push that made the Night King cocky and left himself vulnerable to Arya's stab-tastic ways. There are also plenty of clues that show that Bran has been using his skills to learn from the past to affect the present while subtly tipping the scales for the best possible of the futures he can see. In Season 7, Episode 4, he gives the Valyrian steel dagger that was meant to end his life way back in Season 1 to Arya. We see Arya put it to good use, sparring against Brienne, and then later she puts it to good use against Littlefinger. But the biggest death Yeah, the Night King. You think that was just a coincidence? Nah, he knew exactly what he was doing. He's pulling the strings without anyone even realizing that that's what he's doing. He doesn't need to have a huge heroic moment in the present because he's already done all the work he's needed to in the past. Also, can we just take a moment to appreciate the irony that the blade meant to kill Bran ended up killing the person who wanted to kill Bran the most? Of course, we do have one additional question. Why did he want to keep Jaime Lannister alive? We didn't see Jaime turn the tide of the battle, with his biggest contribution being, staying alive. Is there still a bigger purpose for Jaime that only Bran can see? Cersei. But what do you free folk think? Was Bran Stark secretly a genius, or was he bumbling his way through the Battle of Winterfell? What plans does Cersei have to take out Daenerys' 2 remaining dragons? And did Bran really just peace out to watch HBO's other quality Sunday night programming like Barry? Let's discuss. Thanks to Mortal Kombat 11 for sponsoring today's episode. From NetherRealm Studios comes the latest installment in the critically acclaimed franchise, providing a deeper and more personalized experience than ever before. The all-new custom character variations give you unprecedented control of your fighters to make them your own. Featuring a roster of new and returning classic fighters like Baraka and Scorpion, Mortal Kombat's best-in-class cinematic story mode continues the epic saga over 25 years in the making. Mortal Kombat 11 is in stores now for PS4, Xbox One, PC, and even Nintendo Switch, so go check it out.